Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Streamlining Your Data to Enable Digital Transformation, presented by SpecRite. Thank you for joining us today. We're thrilled to open up the conversation about the importance of digitizing your spec data in a purpose-built platform, especially in today's climate when there's so much uncertainty and the importance of supply chain optimization is at its peak. Before I introduce you to our speakers, I will be going over just some basic housekeeping rules. We will be having some questions at the end of this webinar. So while our speakers are talking, if you have any questions, we'll be having this Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So make sure to drop those in the chat as we go along. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can at the end, depending on how much we have time for. So let me introduce you to our lovely speakers that we have here today. So we have Ayman Shokri, our CTO of SpecRite. He leads the product and engineering teams here at SpecRite. And Ayman is an amazing thought leader around AI and technology and a member of the Forbes Technology Council, where he shares his expertise often. Prior to SpecRite, Ayman was part of the e-commerce platform team at Amazon, a CTO at HireRight, and a leader at Microsoft in the developer division. Thanks for being here today, Ayman. And then we also have Danielle Go joining us, Senior Manager of Special Projects at SpecRite. Danielle has held multiple roles across multiple departments at SpecRite, including customer success, product, and strategic partnerships. She leverages her diverse SpecRite experience to drive internal strategic initiatives, guide the product roadmap for SpecRite Network, and manages the Spec Assist and Spec Squad program. She also created and previously managed SpecRite's academia program, which is flourishing, and enables students across the top packaging programs to learn SpecRite in the classroom, joining the workforce with hands-on experience. Thank you, Danielle, for being here today. All right. In today's webinar, we're going to be going over just the problems with traditional data collection that we see today, all the ways that you can digitize your data, how the industry is evolving, the value of digitized data, and we'll be finishing off with the live Q&A. All right, let's dive right into the webinar. Ayman and Danielle, I'll pass it off to you.
Thanks, Catherine. So it's great to be with everybody. We wanted to start tackling the whole thing about, hey, how are you ingesting your data and how is that problem with the traditional data collection? So Catherine, if you go to the next slide, as you can see, like we've done 2025 State of Spec Management Survey. It still shows that traditional data collection methods are still widely used. Like for example, if you look at the survey, more than 65% still rely on Excel. They still have more than half, 57% on shared drives. All right. Even homegrown systems, right, is common as well. This data for us highlighted that, hey, it's a challenge. Information is stored in multiple formats and location. Sometimes even crucial data is documented at all. It's not documented at all, but instead kept in minds of coworkers in some cases. Well, the problem with that is that fragmentation of this data can lead to extreme inefficiencies, right? Obviously, things like potential data loss. You need to be able to start integrating this data from different departmental stuff together, right? So this by itself summarizes the challenge we're all in. It's just literally data everywhere, silos not integrated together. And if you go to the next slide, Catherine, this is, we try to think about it as, it's a normal thing. It's a different maturity model. If you look at this is what we constantly see with our customers. They go through a different variety of levels in their data journey of spec management specifically. If you look at most of the starts is you're in the chaos stage, right, where your data is highly disorganized. Information is often stored in paper files and filing cabinets, making it really difficult to access and share, right? Whether you're the packaging engineer or any sort of engineer or new product development, dealing with vendors, right? You're keeping all those on your personal computers. Again, tremendous amount of potential data loss, inconsistency in the data. The next part we see with most of our customers as well is they're in the static side of things, which is basically you're not updating it. You're using tools like Excel and PDF. You've started some kind of digitization. However, you still lack the governance or standardization of this data, right? It's data in a shared drive. You cannot share it outside some cases. Again, you might face issues now in the second step of your digitization, which is basically version control issues, correct? Inefficiencies, like what is really the source of truth? Different copies everywhere. And that's part of what we see as well in a lot of our customers in their data journey. If you look at the areas that we try to focus on, if it's more of you're getting into the right area of managing your data, it's where you start being dynamic or strategic or intelligent, right? We look at it as it's a journey. When you're in the dynamic stage, you begin actually start implementing some reportable applications or controlled attributes for your applications, right? You start layering some workflows and processes that you can manage data more efficiently. You have some kind of data governance, right? It becomes a priority of your system. Again, it's accessible across your organization. So at least now you started to speak about some kind of source of truth before you move into the more of, no, now I'm at a stage that I can be in a strategic maturity kind of a thing, where actually data becomes a product for me. It's a critical asset, right? It is a prerequisite for decision making and processes, right? We focus on it from it's a completeness, it's a high quality, it's my vendor is integrated into my overall workflows and the data itself. We have a robust governance over your data, and you have a continuous reporting and maintenance of the data integrity. You're always aware that, no, this is the source of truth. It has a high confidence in this data. After you achieve that, that's where you can move into the ultimate goal, which is everybody wants at this moment from our customers. And we talk about it with some of our advanced customers as well. It's more of now your data you have it in a good state that you can start layering some intelligent layers over it, right? You continuously enrich this data through AI and integrations. Data flows is flowing seamlessly from all your systems. It could be even other systems that you've acquired, homegrown systems, your ERPs of the world, your PLMs of the world, all of this integrated into one data flow, right? So again, this is where even you start enabling even more advanced scenarios, and we'll talk about it even afterwards, whether it's agentic AI and stuff where you can trust the decisions made on your data and the data intelligence because you have the right data, you have it in the right standard way, you've cleaned it already, and you have the right governance to actually start using your data and having that level of confidence. Again, it's a journey. We see our customers across the board, but the first two are honestly the majority of where are most of us and most of our customers that we're seeing. And as you go through the journey, again, we help you there, and we start looking at this data as data as gold, right? It is what fuels the engine behind your workflows, what fuels your processes, and what ultimately will fuel tons of your decision making. I'll pass to you, Danielle.
Perfect. Yeah, and I encourage everyone. I'm sure everyone was kind of imagining when Ivan's talking through the maturity model of like where you land today and where your business lands today, and also where you hope to go to. Because I think, Catherine, if we click forward, when we think about kind of the data journey, everybody is at a different level of maturity, which leads to different needs. We also all have different levels of resources of those who either have the specialty or the time to actually take on some of the, areas of this data journey. So in the next few slides, we're going to go through kind of these different sections. The first being data collection. I kind of put this one first because a lot of the times, businesses and brands specifically might not own their own data. You're going to have to reach out to your vendors, to your suppliers to be able to really capture all of the data you need for your system. And this happens, in a few ways for our customers and brands. I think the first, that many of you are probably doing today is a form of, outreach via email, sending over maybe the minimal amount of data that you need or required fields, and kind of collecting those back. Within SpecRite, we also have functionality around like a supplier collaboration module where actually your suppliers and vendors are able to actually log into your system, contribute data, and you can kind of gate their permissions of what kind of actions or views they would be able to have. And this is nice because, within SpecRite, having kind of those standardized templates, you can really guide the vendors on what you need. And this is also, putting the ownership of that data back in the hands of the vendors, but in your own system. And so we'll talk through some other examples later on. Kind of the next step in the data journey is data validation and standardization. This is really once you kind of receive your data, whether you are receiving it from vendors, whether you're pulling it from legacy systems, it's really getting it into, a format where you can actually, upload it into a spec management system and start to kind of find commonalities, whether those are, cleaning up kind of drop downs and making the, input process later on easier. Maybe it's connecting records to one another, or even connecting records of, let's say, like a packaging spec to a supplier, like being able to have that cleanly level of data and validation is helpful. We also have, partners who are looking to do, physical validation if that is a need around your data journey as well. Kind of continuing on, we have data quality and completeness. And this is really a few facets, but it's ensuring that all of the data you have is not only up to date, but also is the, information you need. If we go back to kind of the supplier piece, this is a big lift for both brands and suppliers to kind of get all of the data you need together. And so being able to pinpoint, what is required, what complete looks like to your organization will be helpful to, kind of guide that data journey. And then, once you have the data, there is a piece of, validating it internally for the level of quality. As we kind of move on, looking at data uploading, now we have all of our data, maybe we've standardized our data, we validated our data, and we want to get this data into the system. We have kind of a few options, which kind of go along with the maturity model. The first being just a bulk upload, which is being able to take, something like an Excel or a CSV and upload all of that data, map it to the appropriate kind of fields and templates within the system. When we look at IDP, we're actually looking at taking static documents and using kind of AI to be able to pull out attributes and create new records. And so intelligent document processing, our team built to help with COAs, COIs, but also looking at just general specifications as we look to in some of our newer releases, being able to, kind of read any document and pull out the necessary information if things like on this example, like height or, dimensions are being pointed at. And then if we move kind of even further up the maturity model, when we talk about kind of just ongoing updates of your data and it kind of being continuously refreshed, if you have things like other integrated systems, right, whether that's an ERP, or a sustainability module, making sure kind of that data is always up to date with part numbers and things from other systems. Ivan, anything you want to add kind of on the IDP front?
Yeah, I think, Danielle, you nailed it, correct. IDP started as, how can I get my data information quickly into a spec management system, all right? We've looked at multiple common, that was even 3 or 4 years ago when we enabled for COAs and COIs, certificate of analysis and certificate of insurance for when you're dealing with your suppliers. It used to be, hey, I'm opening it one by one to check what's in there. Now the system just, you pass the document to the system, it parses it, confirms it with you, and uploads that information, and where you can run reports, have triggers on it. So it started as, hey, I'm going to enable those common documents to be ingested and my data to be ingested. But we even took it to the further stage of saying, well, it doesn't have to be a COA or a COI. It could be any spec document that you can upload, right? And that's where again, starts like, how can I get my data into a maturity standard quickly, okay, and digitize it? And the use of AI and machine learning as well to understand that and learning from the system. For example, you've mentioned as it's a height or a depth, right? No, we actually realized you mentioned it's a height, but it could be as well the depth of the box as well, right? So correlating all this information in an AI model, right? Again, it's exciting times. It's only going to get better and better as the models get more and more advanced.
Yep. Perfect. And then, yeah, the last area is really data maintenance. And I think this just goes back to the idea that, you know, data is a product of all of your organizations. And after we create it, we upload it, we also need to maintain it. And I think part of this, right, is around kind of also like culture around your data. How do you make sure that these processes are kind of ingrained in what your businesses are doing? And so, you know, that comes with, you know, tools or features around making sure you're cleaning or auditing your data. You know, maybe once you're uploading it, you're checking for completeness, and just making sure that that kind of data is always up to date.
Yeah, I mean, and the next step, thank you, Danielle. Next step is we're going to talk about how's the industry is evolving, correct? With all the innovation that's happening outside and us evolving even our platform and all stuff. So we'd love if you go to the next slide, actually. Okay. So if you look at how data and how data is relating to AI, correct? Let's speak about generative AI, correct? Now, right now, if you look at a lot of the innovative SaaS solutions, correct? Software as a service solutions, it's been very common now. It's all over, whether it's a chatbot or a marketing campaign platforms, right? All of those are starting to get advantage of this generative AI. Like it truly reminds us of the early days of the 90s, correct? It was like, well, email was a new thing, internet was a new thing, correct? And it's like now everybody has. We believe it's going to be the same thing. The next 2 years is all about now being adopted more and more and more, and being accepted more and more by the users, as well as being incorporated into multiple innovations and platforms, right? Like if you think about the next level of agentic AIs, right? It's basically how can I have live decisions based on real data, do the job on my behalf, right? You think about examples like as you're in the spec management side of things, and a flooding happens somewhere, right? Let's say, hey, for let's say like something happened, hey, there's a flooding in Austin, and you have suppliers there. How can I quickly move those suppliers into, for example, to Dallas? Can you talk to the platform and being able, the platform automatically detects, hey, there is something happening here. We have an opportunity. There's a supplier that can provide you with the same kind of level and everything for your products and specs. Can you help you shift, taking that decision on your behalf as well? So we're moving into that sound around of things as people start trusting this step by step. That becomes more important. The key here, though, if you think about it, is having the right data, because all of those models and assume that you're building on the right data. And if, as the famous thing, if garbage in is garbage out, and that's why it is extremely important to make sure that you have the right data in, you've cleaned it already, right? If you're using platforms like SpecRite and others, you want to be able to say that I am running those models on my source of truth so that I can have the right decision or a high confidence decision at the end. And again, especially in the spec management, we're on an inflection point where if you get it wrong, right, you might not have that, you lose that confidence. And you lose confidence, you gain it. It's going to take you a couple of 2 to 3 years to gain it. Those are, thank you for the next slide. Those are just examples of what we're doing right now, even in SpecRite, right? If you look at even inside the company, and I speak about the first part, we are using things like Copilot. We're using it in our marketing campaigns. We're using AI in our operational work as well. It is becoming part of our day-to-day, even summarizing meetings, meeting notes, right? Having action items. So we're taking advantage of all of that. But even within the SpecRite itself, as well Danielle mentioned before, there's a document processing part, which is the IDP, and we're looking at enabling it for bulk and others, like, hey, group of files, parse it, go do that work for me. But the other part as well we enabled recently is Spec GPT. It's a way, honestly, of just, you don't have to know how the data structure is. You're new to the platform, you just go in, right? You just ask natural language processing, like, hey, similar, tell me all, show me all specs that are affected by the flooding happening in the certain location. A great example is what's happening right as well as now with all the tariffs and stuff and changing in the supply chain markets. Like, how do I know? Tell me all my suppliers that's affected by, or the suppliers that are in a certain region or a certain country, because we know they're going to be impacted by those tariff increases, all stuff. What is the impact? So combining all of those with your the volume that you're buying for, right? The pricing, that it can suggest for you things and understand where you stand from that side. You don't have to go and search for like hundreds of spreadsheets and hundreds of other locations. Just ask the system. They should be able to just help you and generate those kind of information for you. Again, we are at an inflection point where this is going to become more and more mainstream. And honestly, that's something we're looking forward to become across our customers.
Perfect. Yeah. So to wrap things up, I feel like we've talked a little bit about, where you might be on the data journey, what types of, improvements you can make or steps you can take to maybe move up that maturity model. And so we wanted to kind of continue on and talk a little bit about the services at SpecRite and teams that we work with for the digitization path. So we have both the Spec Assist and Spec Squad team, which are really focused on helping provide resources, right, to do the digitization journey. We want to make sure that really this is a scalable and flexible team for whatever services that you might need, and that it's an affordable option, because getting your data into the system a lot of the times can feel like a big lift. Again, whether it's because you don't have the resources or the time to do this. So we want to make sure that we're hitting goals around, data completeness, helping you with your adoption of the system, and really just, overall kind of accelerating your data goals. So some examples of, Spec Assist and Spec Squad with some of our customers today. The first one is a Spec Squad example. With our customer Lacerta, they are kind of the classic story where it was the first slide of your data being in a lot of different places in disorganized spreadsheets. And they really worked with Spec Squad to kind of standardize, centralize that data, and use tools like mass upload to get all of that data into their system. We also looked at, their ERP system to make sure that their part number information and what was in SpecRite and, what would soon be integrated with their ERP would all kind of be speaking the same language. And this really, led to efficiencies, but also, when we're going through kind of the data upload or validation kind of cleaning process, we're also looking to eliminate a lot of duplicate specs that might be in the system. Which is a common practice that we go through with customers. The next example is around Spec Assist, and one of our customers that is a private label retailer. They do an effort annually where they reach out to all of their suppliers to gather, sustainability data to essentially benchmark. And so we supported them by doing kind of continuous outreach to their suppliers and almost sending, reminders essentially, which is sometimes the biggest lift to keep track of, who has sent what, what have we already collected, what do we still need. And so with the Spec Assist team stepping in, we also have kind of increased visibility into some things like open rate, response rates, and others. So during this few month outreach for this private label retailer, we had an open rate of 75% with over 300 suppliers that were, globally supplying this company. 74% of the specs that were previously kind of deemed incomplete when this team was working kind of alone on it were submitted during that time, and 72% of the suppliers actually completed the full data sharing process. So those are just some quick examples of, Spec Squad and Spec Assist supporting. I think if we go to the next slide, we can also just really see some of the impacts just to your, data and data journey when we get all of that data into the system and centralized. When we're talking about just purely, the data in the system, like I said, we look to kind of reduce duplicate specs, as well as making sure that we didn't touch as much on today in the webinar, but supplier docs are a big part of the platform, and making sure that those are always up to date, and making sure that the expiration kind of goes out on those. And so just having better visibility on some of those static files. And then definitely a lot of use cases that we support are around sustainability metrics and making sure that that data is holistic in your platform. This really leads to, kind of a reduction in packaging spend. Also kind of to your top line, if you have your data centralized, to being able to get products to market faster, as well as kind of dealing with some of the recalled information. So I think that is it for today. And then I think we're going to open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Danielle and Ayman, just for sharing your insights with us. There's definitely a lot of food for thought there. So I want to open up the floor for any questions that we may have. This is the time now, if you haven't already, to just put some questions in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can coming up. So just give you a little bit of time to put those questions in there, and we'll get started right away. Okay, so first, thank you everyone for joining us today. First question that we have is, can you give an example on how companies can use SpecRite to report on sustainability and EPR?
Yeah, I can kick things off. I think around sustainability, a lot of the templates that are baked within SpecRite's platform for packaging and products have some of the best practices and attributes needed to either collect that sustainability data from suppliers, or be able to report and create dashboards over time, where you can really enable looking at sustainability benchmarking over time. I think also a big use case today is EPR, and not only making sure we have those attributes, but also integrating with other systems like a Lorax to make sure that you're getting all of the data structured correctly for reporting.
Awesome, thank you, Danielle. Another question that we had is, what obstacles should businesses anticipate during the transition to digital data systems, and how can they prepare for them?
Yep, great question. Thank you, Catherine. I'll take that one. There are a number of challenges that usually most companies face. The first one with data is, do you really have access to the right data, right? Like, it's basically, you have to do the analysis of where does your data live, correct? Is it really the source of truth? Do you have does it live everywhere? Because in some cases, especially the bigger companies, it's on a SharePoint, it's on a email drives, it's on a Google Drive, right? But consolidating this data, getting to the source of truth of it. The other one is also related to data, is like, do you actually have it within your company? There's a number of customers where the actual source of data is actually with their suppliers, right? So you'll have to, okay, do I have this data? Do I have to reach out to my suppliers? Do I have a supplier reach out program that I can consolidate this data on my side, right? And again, some of this data has been for 20 years or something owned by the supplier, or actually managed by supplier. The person that knew about it, that knew about that part, is actually no longer in the company in some cases. So again, those kind of data cleanup, data cleansing, right? And even when people ask me about, well, what do I do with AI and stuff? Well, use AI to clean data first. Like, this is one of the challenges people think about. Don't use it to get the models and all stuff running, because if you run it again in wrong data or not accurate data, you're going to get inaccurate results, right? But use the AI to clean your data, right? And start thinking about, okay, what are the scenarios that I want to do? What is the goal of my digitalization, right? Don't think about the how. Think first about the what parts. What do I want to achieve on it? Because honestly, the solution is usually not as complex as the problem that you're trying to solve. Just if you just break some things down.
Awesome, thanks, Simon. Yeah, those are definitely great points. I think we've had a lot of cases where data has just been with suppliers, and it's just really inaccessible. So with SpecRite, it's definitely a huge step up from that. Also, another question we had is, how can businesses evaluate which digitization approach is best suited for their needs?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. I think going back to the kind of maturity model again, I think it's always a great starting point to just evaluate and kind of benchmark where you're at today. And kind of like what Iman alluded to as well is, where you want to go. I think it's a crawl, walk, run, right? We're not trying to jump from one bucket of the end all the way to the other. And so it's finding the services and the types of data journey activities that you need to get you kind of to the next maturity stage there. And so just kind of evaluating where you're at and where you want to go.
Awesome. Thanks, Danielle. Yeah, I know we work really closely with all of our customers to really cater to their best needs and just to figure out what approach works the best for them. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining on this webinar. Thank you, especially Danielle and Iman, for kicking us off and leading us today. I know it's very insightful and just really helpful to learn more about how to digitize your data and the process behind that. So yeah, I just want to say thank you again, and feel free, anyone, to reach out to Danielle or Iman on LinkedIn, and you can always find us, ask more questions. Find us at specwrite.com, and stay tuned for more webinars. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thanks.